So here's the order. James Brady of NC State will go first. Feminoff second from Florida State. Skizzle from Virginia Tech will go third. And on down the line.
So looking forward to an interesting contest here because you've got, some varying degree of difficulty. Joe Kumos is probably one of the strongest athletes you'll ever see. You watch him in the warm-up here. He goes higher than anybody in the contest. His entries maybe aren't as clean as some of the other divers. He's going to do the exact same list of dives he did yesterday on the 3-meter, but on the 1-meter springboard, which is not normal.
You said Duncan was best yesterday, right?
He was. He was the winner yesterday as a freshman. And today he had a bad dive in the first round and came back and actually ended up being the leader at the end of the preliminaries, which it takes all 6 rounds, so you can see some major changes as you go. But he was awesome yesterday and, pulled it out, was 2 points down going into the last round and ended up winning by about 2 points.
But they start from 0 tonight, right?
Everybody starts over at the beginning of the night with no points, so you got to earn it in the final.
Is there an advantage going first or last?
I think there's different things about it. If you're going first, you got in the top 8 and you're competing for the first place, and there's maybe a little less pressure. If you were first in the preliminary, sometimes that works to your advantage. You know what you got to do, or it can be work against you and say, you had this great preliminary, now you got to back it up.
Right.
So you'll never see. Man, that was Greg right there in the warm-up doing a pretty awesome front 3.5 tuck, and that was a dive he did not do very well in the preliminaries this morning, so we shall see what happens. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It'll be James Brady diving first for NC State. Again, there's 6 rounds in the 1-meter final.
And James is an athlete that's probably his best event is the platform event, but he's already had a pretty successful championship here as he finished 3rd yesterday. On the 3-meter contest and doing a little easier dives, not quite as strong necessarily, but doing dives that he executes very well, and you'll see he gets into the water really, really well, nice and clean. So, your judges are looking for kind of this overall impression, but they also have to look at the elements of the dives, which include the starting position, the approach and the takeoff, the flight through the air, and then that entry into the water. And so you got all these elements you're looking for and making those technically correct, but it's how that overall comes together. And James is really good at going in the water really clean with very little splash and also really tight body position.
Brady, ironically, from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, but swimming for the Wolf or diving for the Wolfpack, sophomore.
And he's going to start off with a front 2.5 pike here. So he's going to go forward with 2.5 rotations and then go in head first. That's a bit of a surprise there. He missed his entry. I'm talking about how great his entries are, and then he just let it slide past a little bit. Still a pretty good dive in those categories as far as the judging goes. He ended up with 6.5s mostly. So it's just under that good range in the satisfactory.
Aiden Faminoff, a NCAA qualifier from last year, sophomore at Florida State.
And Aiden is from Canada, has represented them as well. He was 3rd at their Olympic trials in 2016 on the platform event. And that was a really nice inner 1.5 pike. And Aiden has the lowest degree of difficulty of the contest. But, again, those good entries that can raise those scores for execution.
So his score, 51.6. What is a good score in diving? What are we looking for?
So you're looking for the execution scores to be in that 7 or above range. And the total award, these guys that are competing for the championship, hopefully in the 60-point range or better. You'll see some variation there depending on the degree of difficulty.
So Skizzle from Virginia Tech. So 2.6 degree of difficulty here.
And you see Ben had a little trouble on his hurdle there where he ended up over the end of the diving board, and then, it's how to maintain your composure in that moment and still do a good dive, and he had a little trouble there, faltered a bit.
Yeah, Skizzle in a distant third at the moment. Here's Josh Davidson from Florida State.
Starting off with a really nice reverse 1.5 somersaults with 2.5 twists. So you got a lot of different components going on there. Again, topping that 60-point mark there.
Best score of the contest so far. Davidson puts up a 63, and that moves him into first place.
And Josh was the runner-up yesterday. So, you know, he's definitely got some talent as well. Has represented Team USA at the Junior Pan Ams last year.
There's Kumos, the ACC champion from last year. A senior from Notre Dame. Well, that was the highest degree of difficulty of the first round.
Yeah, and you're going to see that a lot with him. So that's, again, a good example of here's this really powerful back 2.5 somersaults pike. You'll probably see most of the other men do it tuck. So a little easier dive, but again, a little heavy going into the water and not quite as clean on the finish. But very powerful.
There's Thatcher from Florida State.
Cam's doing the same dive, back 2.5 somersaults, but in the tuck position, so a lower degree of difficulty. And you saw him over-rotate just a little bit there on the finish. You know, but that's a better effort than his one in the prelims earlier today as well. Again, but that's kind of the scores for execution down there at 4.5 to 5, being more in the lower end of the satisfactory category.
Yeah, 43-50. Now, take us through the scoring, though, because not every dive is going to count in that final score when we get through the 6 rounds.
Right. So all the dives are actually going to count, but what you have is the 7 judges. So they throw out the 2 highest scores and the 2 lowest scores because not everybody sees it exactly the same. Tries to account for that subjectivity of the sport a little bit.
This is Moretti of Duke.
And Evan did the same dive that Cameron just did. Maybe a little higher as far as the jump and the spin, but again, still a little over-rotated on the finish, but
good score.
A pretty good score and a pretty nice dive. Just pulled a little too much on the end there and gets away from him a touch, but it was still a better dive than the one before.
A 57 for Moretti that puts him in 3rd place. Here's the final diver of the first round, Greg Duncan, who I know you feel like is one of the favorites, winning the 3-meter yesterday.
You know, he's been on a pretty good roll the last year and a half of just growing and developing, and he just looks so calm and handles himself very well.
Duncan from Oakton, Virginia.
And that was way better than the first one this morning. He missed it for 3.5 today, and that's going to be in the 7.5, 8 range would be my guess.
A 69 for Greg Duncan, and that's the best dive we've seen.
And talking about a difference of total award, I think he was in the 30s this morning, and that's 69. So, you know, that's a 30-point swing.
So Duncan 6 points ahead of Davidson after the first round. Back up to Brady now as we begin round number 2.
You see Brady doing the same dive that Greg just did, that front 3.5 somersault tuck. And again, that was well done. Maybe not quite as high. Still pretty good entry, but pretty close. And again, topping that 60-point mark, which is going to keep him right where he wants to be in contention.
61.5 was his score. Faminoff.
And again, a well-executed front 2.5 somersaults pike. And he's going to get scores that are going to be in the good range, all of them, and that's going to keep him right there.
$58.5 on that dive.
So Ben Schissel here going a 51.34, which is a forward 1.5 somersaults with 2 twists in the free position.
2.6 level of difficulty.
And he did a much better hurdle there, was set up on the end of the diving board and in a good shape. Again, he's lets it over-rotate a little bit on the finish there, so it's going to bring his scores down.
Yeah, it was only a 80.60 is his total score now, but that was just a 41.6 for that dive.
And I think sometimes, it's guys with not as a lot of experience getting into the finals, and then how to handle it once you get there is getting a little too juiced, I think, and trying to maintain that level of calm and be in the right manner.
It's Davidson from Florida State.
So you see that's probably his lowest degree of difficulty dive there at 2.3.
It is.
But you look at what his scores are, and he gets the execution scores in the 8.5 and 8 range, so good to very good.
55.20 for the dive.
Yeah, so for a degree of difficulty that's 2.3, and now you've got Joe Kumos doing the one that's a forward 3.5 somersault pike that's 3.3. That's 1 full point higher in the degree of difficulty.
Yeah, he actually has the highest degree of difficulty in the last round of all the dives of the night.
He's got about a point over everybody else in the contest at a minimum, and more over some of the other competitors.
Crowd liked it.
Well, and I liked it too. I will tell you that's a super hurdle for him. Right, a little back on the end of the diving board, but huge jump and how high he is.
69.3 for Kumos on that dive.
And you can see that finish is just not quite that rip entry we're looking for, but man, is it a huge start.
Cameron Thatcher, his second dive.
So you see Cameron doing one less somersault here with a 2.6 degree difficulty, so a forward 2.5 somersault pike. And that was really, really well executed. Again, you got to do the dives that you do and do them well and get those execution scores.
66.3.
Yeah, that was awesome. Good for him.
Wow.
Several of these guys have competed and represented their country, whether it's the USA or Canada with Aiden, and got some international experience too. So used to those pressured situations, but they all know each other too.
This is Moretti, a junior from Duke. Top 25 finisher last year at the NCAAs.
And he had a really good start there. Missed his entries a little bit. Again, I think Evan yesterday, was second in the preliminaries on 3-meter and struggled a little bit in the final, and just trying to maintain that level of composure and get it going. Still a good dive, just not a great dive.
54 was his score. Now here's Duncan, who was the leader after the first round with a 69 on his first dive. This is a 3.2 level of difficulty.
Yep, so he's doing the forward 2.5 somersaults, but he's going to add a full twist in the middle of it there. Typically, you see the divers do that out, which means they do the somersaulting portion first, come out and do the full twist, and then bend over and dive in.
This is his toughest dive of the night, of the 6 he will do in terms of difficulty.
And what I would say for Greg's diving, why I like it so much, is he just looks very smooth and relaxed, and there's not a lot of wasted effort.
Just a freshman. That was a 65.60.
Just finishes a little low to the water, so it's hard to go in that very good category, but right along the good level, 7s.
So Duncan remains in first place through the first 2 rounds. We go now to round number 3.
So you got, James Brady doing reverse 2.5 tuck, so he's going to rotate back towards the diving board with that forward hurdle.
You didn't like that one, obviously.
Well, unfortunately for James, you got to use your visual cues a little better, and I think he had a really good start there, but as you see him, he unfolds and opens up too late, and he's vertical, but he's still above the board, and unfortunately that doesn't end well.
Yeah, that was a 27 on that individual dive. Faminoff ready now with his third dive.
And again, Aiden doing a back 1.5 pike here. So again, a pretty easy dive at 2.3 degree of difficulty. So you're looking for really good execution scores here in the 8.5 range, hopefully.
Part of this talented Florida State diving team.
And unfortunately, he's going to come up a little short of that. He pulled on the bottom and let it go over and pass vertical a bit, but a good start.
Score was a 46 for this dive.
And that's where you start to see that degree of difficulty really factor in, is that, he's still got fairly good scores. He was 6.5 to 7, but only, a 2.3 degree of difficulty.
Skizzle.
And Ben's warming up. That was a better dive for him. It's again, it's the reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. Just pulled it by a little bit on the bottom, but trying to maintain his level of composure there.
A 54 for this dive, the reverse 2.5 somersault tuck. And now Davidson.
And Josh is only a freshman too. This is another reverse 2.5 tuck, so you get to see the same dive. And probably going to score maybe about the same, just a little over the end with his feet coming down on the hurdle. And then it scooted a little bit forward on him, so it ended up just a hair short, but a lot tighter. Just a little short of vertical and throwing some short water there.
The dive was scored a 54, and now Kumos up. This will be a 3.2 level of difficulty dive.
So again, you're going to see Joe, who spins very well in the pike position. He's going to do that same dive, but he's going to do it in pike. So the reverse 2.5 somersaults with the pike position with straight legs. Well,
no, there's no deduction for that, right?
Well, no, there actually is.
There is?
It's a 2-point deduction from all the judges after he does his dive. So that's called a balk. And again, so you see that you're going to see the judges' scores come up, and then they're going to call the declare the balk and take it 2 points from each of the judges' scores.
Okay. 73-60.
But it's going to come down.
That was the highest score dive of the night.
Yeah. So it's going to get those 8. You got scores of 8.5 to 7 up there. They're going to come down.
54-40. Wow.
Yeah, and that's going to make it a little more challenging for Joe here. Unfortunately, he did a great job after having that really bad hurdle, and that's kind of the danger of doing that hurdle that's a little more inconsistent and jumping really high. Sometimes you get out of balance. He did a nice job to save it and not fall into the water, which would end up being a failed dive, really.
Cameron Thatcher from Florida State.
And this one's his highest degree of difficulty dive. It's a front 2.5 somersaults with a full twist in the pike position again. And that was a really nice full twisting 2.5 from Cameron.
A 62-4 is the score.
Just finished a little bit low, but again, gets in that range of 6.5 to 7 between satisfactory and good for the judges' scores.
Evan Moretti from Duke.
Evan is doing 305C, so a reverse 2.5 somersault tuck again. That forward-facing hurdle, but rotating backwards there, using his visual cues to try and find that entry. Unfortunately, just a little over rotation on that. Didn't look back quite enough.
Just a 51 on that dive. That'll raise his 3-round total to 162.
And you see, yeah, he makes it easy. He's got to finish.
Duncan, the front runner.
And Greg, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he's trying to finish the first half of the competition in the lead.
Yep. So this was an 81-point dive for him in the preliminaries. It's a reverse 1.5 somersaults with 2.5 twists. I believe he got 9s on it earlier today. So.
How about that one?
It's going to be close. I think it might be 8.5. So just a little short and piked with his body there. So not quite as good.
One 8.5, mostly 8. Score is 72.
You can see his body's just not quite straight going in the water and finished a little lower. So, but still good dive and keeping him right where he wants to be.
But Duncan building on his lead after 3 rounds.
You got to be consistent for all 6. So he's doing a great job so far.
So Duncan in the lead. Now Brady starting the 4th round.
It was a nice back 1.5 pike. Again, we go down to that lower degree of difficulty. And his ability to get over 50 points on that is impressive because you got to do it well.
50.6. And Faminoff up and ready to go. He was in 6th place through 3 rounds.
And this is actually a dive change for him. He did reverse 1.5 pike earlier in the prelim, so he's doing the reverse 2.5 tuck. And you know, you're in the final. You can't go down more than a place because he was 7th in this prelim, so not very good, but going for it. I like the effort.
40.5 is the score for that dive. And Skizzle.
So Ben's doing an inward 2.5 tuck, his first backward facing dive, so he's going to do a back press, but then go forward toward the diving board 2.5 times. And again, you're going to see a nice dive there. The thing I can see from where we are in our view is you'll see that really wide split tuck with the feet. And, and if the judges do see that from the side, they are supposed to deduct, which is probably what kept that out of the very good range. Still a good dive.
It's Davidson.
And again, that's a 2.6 degree difficulty. That's the forward 2.5 pike, but awesome dive. Really, really, really good.
Well, a couple of 9s and 3 8.5s. 66.3.
So you see Joe with an inward 2.5 pike here again. He's going to do the same dive, but he's going to do it in the pike position. Takes a lot of strength and balance and patience, but also flexibility, because he's got to get into that pike position, get his legs all the way down to his chest.
Kumos was in 2nd place after 3 rounds.
And that was a great dive. Again, just that little bit on the entry, which is what cost him a hair, just a little loose going through the water. And hard to get above that 7.5 range, and I think that kind of holds him back a little.
So 74.8 for that dive. Here's Cameron Thatcher.
And Cameron's going to do a front 3.5 tuck, so he's going to go 3.5 times around in that tuck position. Wow, that was an impressive save. And if you watch this replay, you're going to see his foot almost slip a little bit on the end of the diving board as he comes down here, right in there, and does an amazing job to make it that well. Because that's a pretty big thing to do, and you get nervous, but he handled that amazing.
4th dive now for Evan Moretti from Scarsdale, New York, the junior representing Duke.
So Evan's doing a front 2.5 pike. Well, I think he must have changed his order around there and replaced that with a reverse 1.5 somersaults with 2.5 twists there. That was a good choice because that was a nice dive.
64.5 is his score for that dive. How soon can you change a dive?
You can make those changes on the diving board, actually,
okay,
in the NCAA. Those are their rules, so he could make that there. Usually, you'll see maybe somebody make that change right after the prelims are over with and practice it for the finals, but you do have that opportunity.
Here's our leader tonight, Duncan, final diver in each round.
So this is his back 2.5 somersaults tuck, and this is sometimes what gives some people some trouble. And no trouble for him. That was amazing.
Duncan, a 69, and protects his lead.
Again, we were talking about that 60-point mark, and I think he's been closer to the 70-point mark to this point.
So 275.6 is Duncan's score. 256.10 is Kumos. Davidson is in third. That's through 4 rounds. Again, we have 6 rounds, so 2 more dives for each diver.
We have James Brady doing an inward 2.5 somersault tuck. Again, going to rotate toward the diving board. And there's a good example of that clean entry I'm talking about. Again, not the highest jumping dive, but amazing going in vertical and straight. Nice pointed feet and a good clean entry.
Score was a 68.2. Faminoff.
So he's going to be doing a twisting dive. It's a reverse 1.5 somersaults with 1.5 twists. Well, again, another change. That looks like it was reverse 1.5 with 2.5 twists. So I think maybe the strategy for him and his coach, John Proctor, was get through to the final, and then maybe we'll beef up our degree of difficulty a little bit and try and do some harder dives.
Just a 45, though, on this dive.
Yeah, and that's going to happen sometimes. Again, he's a platform diver. Is probably his strength. And so 1 meter getting through, that's a little bit of probably a bonus for them.
Well, we're going to see Skizzle now, but we should point out that the diving is different than the swimming. They can't automatically qualify for the NCAAs just based on performance here.
That's correct. That was a nice front 3.5 tuck from Ben, but you're exactly right, is that they can come here and have a great ACC championships, and they have to go back to the NCAA's own meet in a few weeks, and that's how you earn your ticket into the NCAA championships.
So what do you use this meet for then?
It's a good practice for that contest. It's basically the same format that the NCAA championships are, but it's also a good chance to gauge where you are going in. Do you need to make some adjustments? How do you handle the pressure?
Forward 3.5 somersault tuck by Davidson.
And that was a really good start. Unfortunately, just let it go by. Otherwise, it gets that clean entry straight up and down, and Pike saves a little harder. He probably gets in the 7.5, 8 range there, and
61.5 is the score for that dive. Kumos is up next.
When you're chasing the leader, that 61 is not quite enough.
Kumos, the defending champion in this event, but in second place all night long so far.
Yep. Joe's doing a front 2.5 with a full twist, and one of the things I want you to look at is just how high he jumps and how high he finishes. He probably finishes that dive, anywhere from 4 to 6 feet higher than most of the guys in the contest. Unfortunately, goes by.
65.6 is the score for that dive.
It's a good dive, but got to clean up the entry.
Thatcher, his 5th dive.
Cameron's doing a reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck. His prelim of this was amazing too. And he had it. You see him just come out and pull a little bit too much on the entry, and so it just over rotates.
52.5 is the score for that dive.
And it's a little game of little movements, because he just pulled maybe a couple 2 inches too far by on that, and it ends up, instead of being 7.5, 8, in the 5.5, 6 range. So got a lot going on.
It's Moretti.
His coach is happy. You can see Nunzio in the background there with a lot of excitement for that inward 2.5, and with good reason.
77.5 is the score for this individual dive.
And as you're watching that, you see him, he's got those flexed feet and the split tuck, but man, is that a great entry and finish, and nice and straight up and down.
It doesn't move him up past Kumos, however.
And here
Here's
comes
Duncan, our leader.
So we'll see a reverse 2.5 somersaults tuck here and see if he can keep building on his lead. That's going to get very good scores.
76.5, and that is definitely going to keep him in the lead. In fact, increase his lead a little bit.
And you just really see, you know, his entries are very good. It's clean and it makes a difference. But the dive looks easy.
So he has got a 31-point lead over Kumos heading into this final round.
Yeah, it's going to be. Looks like it's his to take a hold of here.
This is Brady starting the final round.
James did a nice back 1.5 somersaults with 1.5 twists. Again, it's got the lower degree of difficulty at that 2.5, but pretty good execution in the good range at 7 to 7.5.
53.75 the score. His final total 311.75.
And again, his best event's also platform, so that 311, that's not a bad thing. For him being in 2 finals and 3rd place yesterday, it's a good start for him in North Carolina State.
There's Feminoff.
And this is his highest degree of difficulty dive of the day, so it's an inward 2.5 somersaults tuck at 3.1. And he does it well. It's a little low finishing, and that's why you get the scores down there in the satisfactory range.
58.9 is the score for that dive. 300.5 is his total score. Skizzle now from Virginia Tech.
Ben's finishing with a back 2.5 somersault tuck. And Ben missed that one again, a little over on the finish, but Ben and Greg Duncan actually came from the same club program in Virginia. So they were teammates before they went off to college.
Yeah, he's not going to be happy with that last dive. 37.5. And now Davidson with his final dive.
See Josh do an inward 2.5 somersaults tuck. It's nice to finish with that dive. It's that back takeoff, maybe a little nerves, and a dive you feel really comfortable with and do well. And that was a nice effort. Not quite as clean on the finish, but made it easy and finished a little higher than Aiden's just a couple dives before.
68.2 the score, and he finishes 368.20. Kumos.
Joe's going to do a front 2.5 somersaults with 2 twists. Most of the guys you see do a full twist. He's going to add one more twist to it again. It's a dive that you'll see the gentleman do on 3-meter more often.
He's the defending champion. It doesn't look like he's going to defend his title. He still has a good shot at finishing second, though.
And that's gonna help, but I think it's going to be on Greg to finish it out.
70.20.
That's a very athletic and powerful dive, and especially if you watch, you see him step back on the diving board there in his hurdle and not quite land on the end and still make it easy.
Thatcher up next.
Cameron's going to finish with an inward 2.5 somersault tuck.
This is the toughest degree of difficulty he's performed tonight.
Nice to save one of your best for last. That was a nice dive.
71.3 his final dive. 2 more divers left. Evan Moretti from Duke.
So Evan's got a forward 2.5 somersaults with 1 twist. Again, we just saw Joe do that with 2 twists. So let's see if Evan can keep himself in the same spot.
Moretti was in 3rd place. Let's see if that's good enough to move him into 2nd. 62.40.
Going to come up just a little short. It was a good dive, just a little over on his finish. Again, got to work on cleaning up that last little bit into the water and making it really solid.
So here it is. Duncan trying to win a title on the opening 2 nights of the competition.
Well, and as a freshman too, that first time here. So he's got a good chance to do that. He's got to do a solid dive, but I think you're going to see a really good one. Just the way he's competing, he seems to be right in the zone.
From North Carolina.
That's definitely going to do it. So probably 8.5.
75.95 his final score. And Gregory Duncan of the University of North Carolina is the men's 1-meter champion. His 2nd straight title. He won last night, he's won tonight, and he's just a freshman, as you pointed out.
That was a pretty amazing contest. You don't see that from a lot of freshmen with that kind of composure and handling himself, but that was awesome.
Look at that score. He was way in front of Kumos.
428, that's averaging over 70 points a dive. We're talking about 60 being good. This morning he went 369, so that's a significantly higher score here in the final. So awesome job for him.
So congratulations to Greg Duncan, just a freshman, winning the ACC men's 1-meter final. So he's the ACC champion in the 1-meter.
Kind of nice contest for Joe Kumos too. Again, he's got a lot of power. Just got to figure out how to make it a little bit prettier. That's the challenge of our sport, is that you also have to be clean and you have to sell that as it is a judge subjective sport where it's overall impression, and going in the water clean also matters.
So we'll take a break. We've just crowned a champion.